Welcome to the Work Positive Podcast with your host, executive coach, and culture architect, Dr. Joey Faucette. Discover strategies and tactics that work positive as Dr. Joey talks with industry leaders who create a positive work culture that attracts top talent and reduces team turnover. Discover how you can create a work positive culture that increases productivity and profits. Here's your host, Dr. Joey.
Hey, Work Positive Nation. Some days are just easier at work than others, aren't they? I mean, it's like you go in and you're feeling pretty good, and then all of a sudden it's like one thing happens in the morning and it could ruin the rest of your day if you let it. Well, newsflash, there's always something waiting out there to ruin your day. However, since you spend 70% of your waking hours at work, what if you knew how to properly respond in such a way that you could still work positive even when adversity rears its ugly head into your work? Huh? What if you could do that? Is that something you'd be interested in doing? Well, you can. And it's easier than you think, but it's not necessarily easy. Does that make any sense? It's going to make sense after you hear what we're going to talk about today, because your work positive culture starts and stops in your mind. Your mind is absolutely incredible. I'm not going to geek out on neuroscience and tell you all the ways it's incredible. But if you ever want to talk about amygdalas and prefrontal cortexes and what I call the caveman brain, your limbic system, I'm more than happy to talk to you. Just email me at drjoey@workpositive.today, because I can geek out on it. Your amygdala thinks that things that aren't there are just as real as things that are. So fear can paralyze you. Fear of things that haven't even happened. In other words, you don't have to be bit by a snake, right, to fear snakes. However, work can be meaningful, purposeful, and satisfying. And you can set your mind in such a way that your work becomes all that and more. And your home life becomes better. Your community life becomes better. Life just gets to be better. So my guest today wrote the last book you'll ever need to read about making this happen. In fact, it's the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read. My guest today is my new best friend. We've spent longer than this podcast already getting to know each other. I'm not so sure we weren't separated at birth or something. You know, he may be my younger brother that my dad never told me about. However, I want you to know the way that I know and appreciate Andrew Kap. Andrew, welcome to the Work Positive Podcast, my friend.
Dr. Joey, thank you so much for having me, for the warm welcome, the wonderful introduction, and in advance to what I know will be a really fun and interesting conversation. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, man, we're excited to have you. So we talk a lot in Work Positive Nation about not recruiting top talent, because I don't think we recruit. I think we attract top talent, right? And in fact, I even had one guest, I think it was Jamie Weeks, who talked about courting top talent, right? So let's talk about how we, in our work, can attract top talent. And let's focus particularly on mindset. And since you know so much about the law of attraction and wrote the last book that I'll ever need to read about it, let's talk about that. How do we attract top talent?
Well, there's a number of ways of doing it, obviously. And I think, when you have a business, for example, you're always thinking about, funnels and leads. You're thinking about lead magnets. You're thinking about when someone comes upon your page or place of business, what impression are they going to get? And by that same token, you're thinking of an extension of a brand and what people hear about you. Having that same mindset towards the influx of your talent and your staff can really serve you as well. When you're thinking of the way I'm doing things, is there something that somebody will hear about me and how I operate? Do I want the word's going to be spread no matter what? Do I want it to be positive or negative? So even just something where, the people that are already there, giving them the kind of experience, the kind of employment experience, or whatever you might want to call it, that they sing your praises and they tell their friends. Because, the thing about it is, whether it's a book recommendation or it's a job recommendation or anything else, people don't think about this in the front of their minds. But when you're recommending something, there's a level of social currency there.
Yeah.
You don't recommend something that you think is going to be horrible. You recommend something because, you want the person to enjoy whatever you recommend, But also, let's be honest, our selfish human nature, you also want to have the secondary credit to them thinking, oh, well, that's the person who told me about it. So part of, one aspect, and there's so many different aspects, but one aspect of, recruiting or attracting top talent is automatically being the kind of place that when they get there, they would love it.
Absolutely. And so it begins not with trying to get people to come in the front door, but it begins with who's behind the door now. What's the culture that we have? How do we think about work? How do we define work? What are our core values around work? So what are some ways that we can set our mind, some tactics, specific tactics within our current work culture to attract that top talent, Andrew?
So one of the main things is you and everybody working with you, are you enjoying your workday? So because everyone knows, imagine, you're coming home. Have you come home from a wonderful massage? Or have you come home from being in a fight? It's going to be two different moods, right? Two different mentalities in the way you're approaching things.
That's a dichotomy there, man.
It becomes a question of even though work isn't, not all, certainly the work I do is not necessarily going to be easy. Can you strategize and can you be intelligent and be intentional in a way that there is a flow, that there's a positive experience, that there's a exchange of creativity and openness to ideas, a way of handling challenges and disagreements that's healthy versus unhealthy. So it all comes down to, what can you, it's kind of like the thing where people say oh, I want to meet someone really special. I need someone who's going to be awesome. And they tell you, well, you've got to be awesome first. This is the same thing. If you are already awesome, well, then all of these things auto-correct. And what I mean by that is if you're really that type of person that already cares about your employees and you already care about the work that you're doing and you already care about the exchange of information and you already care about the way you handle misunderstandings and you already care about how do you handle things when things get really rough, those things all feed one another. It's all one big ecosystem of experience in the workplace. And again, you spend more time at work than you do with your family. And we were saying this before we hit the record button. Not only the people, but the work itself, it becomes a surrogate family. And your relationship with that work is a huge impact. So the reason you want to have a positive mindset and a strategy toward getting a positive mindset and a positive experience is because it all bleeds out and trickles down into every other thing you do, from the way you bring in business, from the way you fulfill business, from the way you execute strategies and products and services for clients and customers, to everything else across the board.
Yeah, you see what you look for, right, Andrew? So if I'm at work and I'm looking for what sucks about work, guess what I'm going to see?
Yes.
I'm going to be the working dead, I call them, right? It's going to just, and by the way, I think the phrase quiet quitting is absolutely hilarious. There's nothing quiet about quitting, right? You're letting the people around you down. You're letting yourself down. I mean, it's hilarious. But if I'm looking for the positive at work and I'm focusing on the positive things at work, guess what I see?
Yeah.
I see those things. So a positive work culture literally starts and stops in your mind. Now, Andrew, I don't think it denies the existence of negative things, negative people, negative experiences. Adversity is going to be there. It's just how you treat that. So you offered up a very important word there just a second ago, strategy, right?
Yes.
What's a strategy, Andrew Kap, for how I can look for the positive, focus on the positive, and filter out the negative in my work?
So this is going to be a little counterintuitive, and this isn't something that you're going to do all the time. It's only going to do in the beginning, as you kind of get into this new process. And that's to expect the negative, because it's going to be there no matter what.
Yes, sir.
So what I would try to do is I will expect and anticipate the negative and decide, okay, when this happens, how do I handle this? Because are you going to be proactive or reactive? So I'll give an example, because I know I'm talking in theory. Let me give an actual example.
Sure.
If I have a customer who didn't, they're upset about a product, which fortunately rarely happens, but they're upset about. I had one. This person they bought from me. They were in Australia and they thought that the dollar amount was the Australian dollars, and they ended up paying a lot more money because I didn't have the USD on the screen, which I then changed. Yeah. Okay. I always knew that when I was putting together my first sales presentation, there was going to be some misunderstanding. So before ahead of time, I said, okay, whenever that misunderstanding comes, Andrew, remind yourself, this person is not out to get you. They don't hate you. They literally, doesn't matter if it's my fault or their fault, they encountered a misunderstanding of what this was.
Mm-hmm.
I want to remember that when this actually happens, to respond with kindness and patience, because it's very easy to instead be offended, like, well, how dare you ask for a refund? You're going to hurt, you're going to hurt my reputation with Stripe because you just bought this. I got a refund. Like, no, listen, by virtue of the fact that I usually have this good attitude, the refunds become rare. Therefore, I don't have to worry about Stripe. So let me worry about actually responding to this person in the right way, that they will have a good positive memory of me, rather than some person that they thought was trying to scam them. I expect this ahead of time, so I have a response ahead of time. Same with, okay, I know if I give a staff member a certain kind of instruction, they're going to drop the ball. And it doesn't mean that they're incompetent. Right. It doesn't mean that they don't care. They're going to buy my really ridiculous high standards, because we know we as business owners, certainly we have our standards. I know in some way, shape, or form they're going to drop the ball. Okay, when this happens, how am I going to communicate and bring it up to them in a way that they're not going to feel offended or to feel like I'm attacking them? In fact, what am I going to preemptively do? Maybe when I'm hiring them, saying, hey, just so you know, you could be an A player, but just understand no matter what, there's going to come a point sooner or later where I'm not going to like something. Understand, I'm telling you right now, it is not a reflection of you. It happens with everyone. I am preemptively planning for all these things and pre-paving the way, so there's always this place of understanding that the person never feels like they're being attacked, because and this is how I approach relationships too. I don't get in a fight with my significant other. Me and my significant other are in a fight with the misunderstanding. Yeah. And when I have that thing and she's screaming at me about something, I'm like, okay, she's really upset right now, but it's the misunderstanding. I'm not going to attack her. I'm going to team with her and attack the misunderstanding and break it down. And that's going to solve it. Same thing again. And, work is like family. You got to treat it the same way. It's a very important relationship. So I know I kind of went on a long stream of thought there, but it's all about anticipating, knowing a mature and proactive way of handling it before time, so that when it happens and you are, mentally brought out, like, or emotionally, like, what is this? You have something in the silo ready to actually work that's constructive.
Oh man, yeah. No, that was spot on. Wasn't too long at all. In fact, in Work Positive Nation, in our 7 Keys to Work Positive coaching program, we talk about adversity. I mean, that's the first key, right? And there's 3 things with it. First one is expect adversity, and to your point, that's exactly what you're talking about. Expect it to happen. It's nothing personal about it. The world's broken, man, and adversity is going to happen, right? So just expect
and here
it.
I'm a law of attraction author saying this. I know, someone say, like, law of attraction author, they expect them to go like, oh no, everything's sunshine and rainbows. I would argue that so many things can be sunshine and rainbows, but the way to way toward that in a much easier pathway is an understanding that there's challenge, like it's an automatic part of life. We are in a 3-dimensional physical reality experience here that it by nature is imperfect, and we can either fight against it and grit our teeth and make it even more difficult, or accept the challenge, understand it, and back to strategically set things up so that we invite more of the good and less frequent of the bad. Right.
And it really builds a cumulative learning experience in the workplace, Andrew, because if I expect adversity to happen, okay, then it's not that I fixate on it. It's not that I focus on it, because we're back to filtering out the negative, right? I expect it to happen, but then I want to engage that adversity exactly in the way you're talking about, so that I can observe it without participating in that adversity or the people who are hung up in that adversity. So I asked myself, what can I learn? And that's what you're talking about. What can I learn from this experience in which expectations weren't met for a customer or for a colleague? What can I learn from that, so that the next time I can clarify those expectations more clearly? I mean, you put USD on there, right, after the Australian experience, right? That's what you learn. And then that allows me to endure the adversity, because I know that there's a learning organization here that I'm a part of, so we can all work on that adversity, attack that adversity, as opposed to each other.
Yeah. And I'm of the mindset of, a student mindset rather than a victim mindset. And what I mean by that is, here I'm talking about anticipating something, but one thing to anticipate among anticipating the things is that you can't anticipate everything. Therefore, one other strategy of prepping for this is knowing that there's going to be things that I can't plan for, but when they do, now I'm in the mindset, like you just said, intuitively and automatically, okay, what can I learn from this? So rather than reacting like, oh my God, it's the worst thing in the world, I'm using that as a teachable moment. And by the way, I realize that, these are very static, words. In the moment, it doesn't feel so static.
No.
In the moment, it doesn't feel so clinical. Right. That's another thing to understand. Like, I'm not saying that the problem isn't real, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't upset you. That's up to you. All I'm saying is nobody but you is ever going to be in a position to handle it in the most constructive way. So as long as you're going through this thing, you might as well be as constructive and strategic as possible, because you're paying your future self with this experience now. So the you of the future is going to have thicker skin, is going to have more resilience, is going to have a better, more sound way of handling these things and anticipating them. So by dealing with in the moment, you're serving, and that person is going to look back to you. And quick little offset, I wrote the last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read in 2019 over the span of about 9.5 weeks. And every day I take time out to be grateful for things or people or events or circumstances. One person that I am grateful to a lot of times is the Andrew from 2019, because he's the one that put in the sweat equity of writing the book, designing the cover, registering the copyright, uploading to Amazon, going on all the interviews. Like that Andrew has done so much for me that I continue to profit off of and I continue to benefit off of. I'm grateful to him. So now every day I try to be the person that the future me will be grateful to today. And when you have that mindset that you're really looking out for yourself and you're paying yourself, it also helps you deal with these things when, as frustrating as they may be, they come down the pike.
Yeah. In the work culture, we can create a legacy of learning. Right. And so what do we hope that, let's say we work for the Acme Corporation, every day we're turning out anvils that Roadrunner drops on Wile E. Coyote. I'm showing my age now with old cartoons, right? But let's say we work for the Acme Corporation and we want the 10-year Acme Corporation, 10 years from now, Acme Corporation, to have learned from the way that we engaged the adversity. So the culture around here takes on that focus on the positive and filter out the negative kind of culture, so that we have a cumulative learning experience. And 10 years from now, it's better. Bob Johansson, whom I interviewed, wrote a book, Office Shock. He's a futurist. He talks about it as future back thinking. What is it going to be like 10 years from now? Okay, then 5, and then we come right back to what's my next best step. For me, Andrew, it's all about that granddaughter who's about to turn 3. I want to create that better life for her. I want to create a work culture for her so that she gains meaning and purpose and satisfaction from her work and discovering who she is. So even now, beginning to offer up that mindset, helping her craft that mindset that sees work as an expression of who she is, and that adversity is going to happen. It's just, I do my best, Pops. I mean, that's what I hear back from her so often. So, man, I love that legacy orientation in a learning organization as we continue to move forward. So I think what you're talking about, Andrew, in terms of attracting top talent also applies to reducing team turnover.
Yes.
To creating a small back door, as I like to think of it. What are some other strategies that we can use once we have attracted that top talent and we're teaming together around the kinds of things that we're talking about here? How do we care for each other? How do we relate with each other? Strategies for that, in addition to what we've already mentioned.
So it's interesting how I put this, because it could be misinterpreted, but you want to serve your colleagues or your employees. You actually want to serve them, and you want to have the mindset of serving them. And what I mean by that is, so for example, this is actually, we'll marry the adversity with the retention here.
Okay.
If something bad happens, and
when something bad happens,
when something bad happens, I might ask myself, okay, this really sucks. How do I make a win out of this? And then what I might do is I might send an email out after I get the win, like, hey guys, quick little story, and I can keep this brief because we're all busy. X happened, and I wanted to challenge myself to make a win. Anyway, take with it what you can. If it helps, cool. I'm not talking down to them, not condescending, but part of the people will stay if you're helping them grow as people, but without being condescending. So like for me, for example, if I've got salespeople, I don't right now, but if I had salespeople right now, I would be continuing to invest in their education and their results. And I would say like, hey, I got you X program, or hey, I got X consultant come in, or hey, I'm, here's something that I'm going to, I've read a book. Here are the notes that you can take in. Like I'm always doing little things so that they know that when they show up and they stick with me, that there's always going to be all these extra benefits that were not in the contract. And I'm doing air quotes for anyone like listening to this on audio, not real contract, but in the implied social or an implied work contract, they're getting so much more on top of it, where it's clear to them that by sticking around, it's to their future benefit and their present benefit as well.
Because at the end of the day, it's people who do the work.
Yeah.
And I love looking beyond. Well, really what you're doing is you're redefining work.
Yes.
So talk a little bit more about that, redefining work. How do you see work at its best when we redefine it, Andrew, from the typical definition?
Well, the way I would redefine work is making it something where it's like, I'm not making it easy. I'm making it seamless. I'm making it a thing where, it's kind of like the conversation. We were joking before how like we spoke for 35 minutes before we even hit the record button. And I said it sounded like 10. Yeah. I wasn't blowing smoke. I was being genuine. It felt like 10 because we had just this good conversation. So work, it's like, how can I make these challenges fun? How can I make them interesting? How can I marry what these challenges are with the aspects of my personality that actually fit in line with it? If I need a customer service person, then I'm going to marry that with somebody with the right personality traits and the right tasks versus a salesperson. I'm not going to take a salesperson and shove them into a customer service position because they're not going to enjoy it and they're not going to thrive. So work is about, finding the right things and the right details and the right ways by which you can thrive in the activity that you're doing. And you're talking to someone who I personally do with a lot of things that I don't like. That's me gritting my teeth. I also realize if I was a little more mature and a little more intelligent, I would hire more people for that stuff as well. But it's like I in other words, like I do my own bookkeeping because I don't trust someone else to mess up a number. So I deal with that. I grit my teeth. But there are plenty of bookkeepers, if I wanted to hire them, that would be more than happy to take that on because it's easy for them. They like numbers.
Yeah. So what's the email address? Because all these bookkeepers in Work Positive Nation want it.
Well, I'm not ready for anyone else just yet, but I'll let you know when I figure that part out too. It's like, okay, that's if I figure out some way of serving 10 people at once, I'm in.
I get it. And I call those pay the rent activities. There's just some stuff you got to slog through. However, to your larger point, man, we have I consider it a moral obligation to each other when we work together to find the best fit.
Yes.
In Work Positive Nation, we talk about it as our high performance pattern. And we've got this narrative process that we walk clients through to where they're looking back on their life and finding personal as well as professional experiences in which I don't want to say time stood still, but to your point, we're in that flow, and I guess we all remember that book, right? It's in that flow to where time becomes less relevant. And we're just giving expression to why we are unique out of, I think we're almost up to 8 billion people right now, right?
Oof. I think we're past 8 billion, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And so the connection between the fit between who I am and where my flow is with the larger company mission. I like to talk about it as the fit between passion and purpose. That makes time stand still. And that's what you're talking about in terms of redefining work, Andrew.
Yeah. And to be candid, sometimes you're not going to find, at least initially, that the link with passion. But at the very least, it's very easy to identify when it's a huge mismatch. And that's... if the faster you can spot that, the better, because spotting that fast means eliminating a lot of just a lot of bad stuff, a lot of bad feelings and a lot of frustration, a lot of impatience and all those other things.
Well, a lot of misfits, right? And so now I guess we're back to the old Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer cartoon that we all see at Christmas, right? Yeah, it's like this working for this company is like the land of misfit toys, right? Because there's but yet at the end of the day, we're all really misfits. It's just a matter of finding where we fit best and what we can do to serve others that also feeds us.
Yeah, and it's funny because we're even if people are remote, if they communicate.
Sure.
There's this aspect of human nature beneath the surface where we're gonna gossip. I mean, you and me, we're not gossiping types, but we still understand human nature.
Sure.
Like there's gonna be a certain level of gossip, meaning if there's something, if overall the way the company is being managed is off and everyone's miserable, they're gonna find ways of intuitively, without even realizing, and talking to one another about it. And it's not like they're fishing for they're not trying to make a mutiny. Right. But it's just like they're naturally expressing themselves. They probably saw someone's facial expression on a Zoom call and like, yeah, I thought that was stupid also, whatever it might be. So this is why you don't want miserable people. This is why you don't want a mismatch of talent and capability with activity, because to be really negative and really candid, it can become a cancer in the organization. And then you end up having to fire everybody. And starting fresh, because one person left over will be the exact person that when other people come in, be like, just so you know, here's what Andrew does wrong, and here's why you're really going to hate it. It's like, geez, I just started. Come on.
Here's why work sucks around here. I know that's the onboarding process, right? Well, I refer to those people as Eeyore vampires. And nothing will ever work for them. And God knows they want to suck the life out of you, not just during the work hours. They want to suck the life out of you so that there's nothing left when you get home to be with family, right?
Yeah. And cliches are a cliche for a reason. And we've all heard that misery loves company.
Yeah, exactly. However, when we're focusing on we know that can happen in the workplace, but again, it starts and stops in our minds, right? So what challenge do you see common in workplaces today, in workspaces, that keeps people, or people allow to keep them from setting their mind in such a way that they expect the adversity, they engage it and endure it?
Well, I think overall, we live in an instant gratification world, and we're surrounded by these messages of not having an attention span and not being able to cope with things and whatever it might be. Right. So the challenge is in finding a way to cut through that noise and get somebody with a level of self-confidence, self-assuredness, self-reliance that they can weather that and rise to the challenge and go through it. And the way, one way by which you do it is just by leading by example. Again, for me, if whether I'm on a Zoom call or I'm in person, but any opportunity I get, if something is annoying me, I'll express like, oh, this is annoying. And I'll go and I'll kind of say, like, not even looking at them, just kind of like myself, like, how do I make this a win? And it'll almost be like, I'm going to create a running joke where like a year later, I'm going to start grumbling, and people are like, how do you make this a win? And they're like making fun of the cool thing you do. The message is landed.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. So the challenge is, we were back to something you said earlier, is casting your mindset before you ever get there. Right? To know when something's annoying me, here's what I'm going to say. Here's how I'm going to respond, as opposed to reacting, which is just returning like for like, right? I'm going to rise above it, to your point, with self-reliance, some maturity. And so there's that gap between my reaction, which is to just give what I got, as opposed to responding. And so that's a premeditated, mindful activity that I establish for myself before I ever get in that situation. So what's a tactic that Work Positive Nation can do to set their mind to address that challenge?
Well, so actually, one thing I draw from just from my book, I called the discount trigger method.
Yeah,
and
that's a good one.
It was inspired by a story that I heard years ago, where a gentleman had this business going and he sold X number of products or something, and people just hated the product. Like for whatever reason, they hated it. And so many people wanted refunds. And this person, whoever he was, I mean, he had integrity. I mean, of course, he refunded their money, but he also felt bad. He felt bad that he had sold them something and that they were disappointed. So he said, okay, here's your money back. But as a way of saying sorry, here's a discount on this other thing. Obviously, I'll refund if you don't like that, but here's a discount on this other piece and you'll love that. And what happened was a lot of the people that wanted the refund ended up, taking the discount on a new thing, which they loved, which actually brought him more money. So he actually made money on having to refund a thing because it led to this bigger sale. So I call this the discount trigger method, in that the fact that when a negative thing happens, like a refund request, use that as a trigger in order to, like in this person, discount, like make a positive thing. So a tactic might be is like, have something in place, have kind of some kind of strategy in place where you have a reaction automatically waiting for you when something negative happens, especially something negative that you expect. So for example, if somebody's, their job is customer service, and for whatever reason, you've been short staffed, so everyone's always waiting for a long time. So you always expect them to be like, someone to be really upset when they get on the phone because they've been waiting for 20 minutes. Okay, besides doing something for myself, I can say, hey, listen, I know you've been waiting, so just so you know, we're giving you blah, blah, blah. Okay, you feel better? But now what am I going to do for myself? Well, maybe you expect Fridays to be really rough, so you reward yourself. Okay, that's the day I'm going to treat myself to ice cream, or whatever I expect to happen really bad. I'm going to have something, whether immediate or later, that I'm rewarding myself for coping very maturely with that experience. Oh, wow. I love that. Yeah, being your own best friend, because your inner critic will take over the headspace, right? But if you're your own best friend, man, I love that. Andrew Kap is my guest on this episode of the Work Positive podcast. He is the author of the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read. So, Andrew, what's a website we can go to interact with you more? And man, you've got some incredible resources for us too. Thank you. Well, the easiest one, which will link to a bunch, is awesomemarvelous.com. But people are just as welcome if they want to check out the book on Amazon. They can go to lastlawofattractionbook.com, which will go to the U.S. listing for Amazon. And of course, it's on Audible also. But if you don't want to pull out your wallet and you just want to check out and see some of the stuff I'm doing, including some other cool methods, youtube.com/Andrew Kap. So any one of those three, but awesomemarvelous.com has all of them in there. And again, thank you for, having me here and sharing, having this conversation exchange, and really give me the opportunity to, pick my brain and bring this out. I really appreciate it. Oh man, I love it. I absolutely love it. Podcasts are always fun because I love my guests and I always learn so much from them. Man, I've learned a ton from you today, so thank you so much. Work Positive Nation always wants to know from my guest, Andrew. So before I let you go, you got to answer one more question. You get to answer one more question. We in Work Positive Nation, we're all about doing things. We want to do one thing. So, Andrew Kap, what's one thing Work Positive Nation can do today to start creating that positive work culture? So, it's not obvious how this is actually going to impact it, but every day, whether it's 1 minute or 5 minutes, set a timer what's going to work for you, and just run through a list in your mind of things that you're grateful for. Because whatever vibe you're about to walk into or whatever vibe you're coming from, you're resetting and having it a much better piece. And just so you know, to be a chatterbox and extend this a little bit longer, no matter what's going on or what worries you have, there's always plenty to be grateful for. For example, and I say this a lot, your heart that's beating in your chest every second of every minute of every hour of every day of every week of every month of every year of every decade you've been alive, tirelessly pumping blood, oxygen, nutrients to all the other parts of your body that serve you: your hands, your fingers, your toes, your feet, your legs, your arms, your eyes that see, your ears that hear, your brain, your wonderful creativity, your desire for a better life that's inspired you to listen to this podcast, the device that you're listening to this podcast on or watching this podcast on, and all the other ways by which it serves you, all the friends you have in your life, all the friends you have had in your life, all the mentors you've had, all the favors that have been done for you. There's always an endless list, past, present, and even future, of things to be grateful for. And when you have yourself in that mindset, I don't care if you believe in your subconscious mind being a powerful supercomputer that's going to take the wheel in ways that you don't realize and get you towards things. I don't care if you believe in the universe and the magnetic quality of the law of attraction and how things are going to find their way to you. I don't care if you believe in anything else. By hook or by crook, when you do this and you open yourself up to this, through work and otherwise, good things will happen. Your days will get better. And those negative things that we've kind of like tried to strategically get ready for, they actually not only become less frequent, but will have a way less impact on you than that they're having right now. So whatever feels really brutal in this moment today will feel like a piece of cake. The same thing would feel like a piece of cake a month from now and 2 months from now and so on and so forth.
Andrew Kap, I am grateful for you, my friend. Thank you so much for the gift of your time and your wisdom that you've shared with us. Work Positive Nation is better because we've spent some time with you today. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Please share this podcast with your friends who are HR and small business leaders so they can do one thing today to create a positive work culture that increases productivity and profits. I'd like to give you a free Work Positive course just for listening. It's called Something to Talk About, and it's transformed the work conversations of so many people all over the world. Get your free copy when you go to workpositive.today/something to talk about, and you can start transforming your conversations today. Remember, it pays to work positive.